afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of Level Up Cyber Live. My name is Tony Bryan, the Executive Director of CyberUp, and I'm your host today, and also your guest. Fortunately, had a last-minute cancellation from our guest for this week, so we did a quick pivot and change, and I'm very excited to spend the next 25-30 minutes with you talking about the idea of what is an apprenticeship intermediary. We've been talking, and I was reflecting on just the full year of shows for this for the past, almost 9 months now. And we've had some incredible guests, right? We've talked apprenticeship, we've talked workforce, we've talked advice on ways for you to break in to get a job and a role. We've talked skills. We've covered a lot of ground and had some incredible guests, join us over the last 9 months and really share some best practices. And, I hope that, over the next few minutes, we can have an actual conversation around, what is CyberUp's role in many of these things, right? How do we help make some of these apprenticeship ideas simpler? How do we provide an easy button for companies? And really, how are we, changing how companies really think about their talent acquisition strategy? Because that really is an important part of this is, how are we looking ahead, not just now? We've seen some trends in hiring for 2023 that has definitely changed quite a bit. I think companies are still hiring, but, more hyper-focused, some specialized roles that they're jumping into. And it seems like kind of entry-level college level hiring has really slowed down quite a bit, which is fine. I think it'll pick back up, and all the articles we're seeing is obviously the bad actors that are out there doing things, they're not going away. Things continue to evolve, and threats continue to expand. So, this might be a short-term kind of blip in the matrix around hiring for just a short period of time, and then we jump right back into it. So we're going to really cover three main topics today. I'm going to encourage you, if you guys have questions or comments or, want to ask questions along the way, please feel free to jump in. Hit us up on LinkedIn or hit us up on the YouTube live show and hit us up with a question. But for today's intents and purpose, we're going to cover three things, right? We're going to actually define the word apprenticeship. I feel like we've done this a lot over the years. So, and I continue to stomp my foot on this just because there's so much that is cropped up in so many different programs and so many different ways to do this that I think sometimes it really is important just to level set expectations, define what it is, and jump into it. So we'll define apprenticeship. We're going to really jump into what is this idea of an apprenticeship intermediary. There's I won't say a lot of different words, but I think the definition has evolved over the past 3 or 5 years. So we're going to start with kind of, what the original lens was, and then really, lean into that. And then we'll talk about what does CyberUp do in this space and how we would be classified as what would be a high intervention apprenticeship intermediary. So I should take us to probably the end of time, but if not, again, please hit me up with questions. Always happy to help, if you have thoughts or if you're looking to get into an apprenticeship or looking to hire for an apprentice, jump in, ask questions, and we'll be sure to go. So without further ado, let's just jump in. So number one, what really is an apprenticeship program? And so, it is the tale as old of time. It was in the Bible. It's been through the years. There have been many iterations and versions of this idea of an apprenticeship, but the original concept broadly is, individual wants a specific role. Individual works under a person, right? Shadows that individual, and they earn a livable wage while they're learning a skill within that specific role, within that specific function, and they eventually become an expert, right? And they do that. So we just celebrated the anniversary of the Apprenticeship Act that was signed years ago. That really puts a more formal definition into what I'm going to go over now. But apprenticeship has been around for a really long time. Now, it really has centered around the idea of trades and really centered around, more traditional kind of, we'll call it blue collar roles, right? Like I think of micro and dirty jobs, like those types of things have really been, the primary focal point for apprenticeship. But over the past, 5 to 6, 7 years, there's apprenticeships like cybersecurity. There are apprenticeships in accounting, education's another huge one that is continuing to pop up, just due to the shortage of teachers. So I think we'll continue to find new ways to incorporate apprenticeship, because it really does solidify the idea of skills-based hiring for companies. And I think we've just really hit the tip of the iceberg for what we're going to have to do across the country to really embrace skills-based hiring the way that we would like to, I think, and really to see the level of success we're all striving for. So in addition to that piece, right, an apprenticeship is really comprised of 3 core components. And that's, without them, it's not an apprenticeship. And there are different variances in which you can mix those words and put them in different things. But in the overall consensus, every apprenticeship has these 3 things. First and foremost, number one important thing within an apprenticeship is the actual job itself. An apprentice has to have a job. They have to be getting paid. And they're learning, right? They're on the job, they're getting paid, they're getting it. So without that first thing, it isn't an apprenticeship, right? I want to make sure that we're very clear. Now, there's many ways in which you could crack it. You can front load training as pre-apprenticeship. You can front load your related training instruction during the apprenticeship. You can do it post. So there's lots of ways in which you could crack it. But the one consistent thing that you can't do is not have a job and count that person as an apprentice, right? So number one, most important kind of classification here with an apprenticeship really is that idea of a role. The second part is that, I just alluded to it, is the idea of related training instruction. Somebody is going to get a job. They're going to learn skills along the way, and they're going to continue to grow. Those skills are measured with the manager. Those skills are measured against apprenticeship standards, and then over some prescribed period of time. Ours, for example, within cybersecurity is a 2,200 hour apprenticeship. That generally is how many hours a person can work in a full 12-month calendar year, but that also could be split up in 18 months if somebody did only work 30 hours a week. So there really is a varying there, but that person is working for a set period of time and they're learning a set of skills, and that's delivered through related training instruction. And then third, and I think also equally important, is the idea of mentorship, right? Who outside of that mentor, the manager for that apprentice, is helping that person along the way, answering questions, giving them advice, and really serving in that role as supporting their journey, right, to become an expert within that field. So quick summary: job. Stomp my foot. I will sing it to the cows come home. Jobs are always number one. So has a job. There's additional skills learned, right? Earn while you learn, related training instruction, or training broadly. And third is really the mentorship. Now, the one thing, and you see it in a couple different circles within like Department of Labor literature, where there's this idea of additional credentialing or certifications, right? So I lump those together with the idea of training, because generally if I'm going to go through a training course or go through an apprenticeship, right, I'm going to earn more often than not an industry recognized credential and some sort of journeyman certificate for the work that I've completed. And this is no different, right, for us, right? So in the CyberUp world, apprentice comes to us. For them, they're getting generally a free pre-apprenticeship training that happens to take them to a CompTIA Security Plus. We find them a role in which they're getting paid, right, to start doing the earn while they learn experience. And then at the end of their first 90 days, when everything is going great, which it usually does, those individuals then begin their second block of related training instruction, right? And we're able to customize that based off of the role that the employer envisions them to have at the end of their 12 months. So there's that. And then for us, our mentorship is really provided through group efforts, right? We're doing monthly mentor meetups and monthly mock interviews and lots of just, ways to facilitate discussions and help them learn and grow. Sprinkle that with regular check-ins with both the apprentice and the hiring managers. We make sure that they're taken care of for the full 12 months or however long that apprenticeship lasts for that individual. So job, related training instruction, mentorship, all leading to some sort of credential in a high full-time paying job at the end. So this idea of an intermediary, right, part two, really has evolved, right? So, the definition of an intermediary really is a a third-party organization that comes into the mix and really helps provide a set of services or takes care of all the things that a corporation would possibly need to do for that specific apprenticeship, right? The idea and definition of an intermediary really kind of got defined and furthered a couple of years ago, right? There was a Department of Labor grant. It was put out to make apprenticeship intermediaries national organizations that really leaned in to be subject matter experts broadly about apprenticeship. They worked and liaised directly with the Department of Labor to make sure they were getting firsthand kind of information to bring it to partners like CyberUp real time and real quick, so we can always know the right thing to do all the time. And really a lot of technical coaching and instruction, right? Like out of all of this stuff, the number one challenge that every apprenticeship program or college or skills path that is out there is experiencing really is that employer engagement. So there's a lot of time and energy spent from intermediaries around employer engagement. But generally, right, so there's SAFL partners, AIR, Apprenti, Aption are your four major players that have landed in this intermediary kind of space. And the majority of it really that I've seen that they're doing is they've got national guideline standards that have been written, right? So it's a framework in essence for an organization to pick up a set of standards that would be, we'll say it off the shelf, right? So it's generic enough and broad enough that they would be universal concepts and ideas that anybody can bring it in for a specific role, apply that same scenario into their organization, and be off to the races and do apprenticeship, right? Which is great. It makes things easier. They're already approved. So it does actually speed up the process and adoption rate of an employer to get into an apprenticeship. And all great stuff, right? So it is an important aspect that intermediary role that those organizations, Aption, SAFL, AIR, and Apprenti play to really drive apprenticeship forward in our country. What I think is actually kind of missing some of this stuff is really that idea of a high intervention intermediary, right? Where, yes, we've gotten standards, and the standards are, and I'm not saying they're easy, right? They've gotten more complicated as apprenticeship has gained popularity, and just for like a small measurement of just where that actually has come from is, for us, we launched our apprenticeship program nearly 6 years ago, and we were the third in the country. So now we're sitting here 6 years later, and there are 600-700 programs in the United States that have popped up, and it's great, right? And I just, from context, just to kind of keep things into perspective, right? Even, we've seen the CyberSeek data. There were 760,000 open roles last year. That did drop, right? I think COVID has had an impact, and some of the economic slowdown and recession or not a recession has definitely had an impact on some of the hiring. We've seen a real kind of downturn, but in the grand scheme of life, even if they're, just for ease of math, 600,000 jobs, right? And I've used this statistic quite a bit, is that, on average, there's about 50,000 students a year graduating with a computer science degree. And just for ease of math, I'm going to be generous, and we're going to round it up to 60,000, right? So there are 60,000 students a year graduating with a computer science degree. If every single one of them chose cybersecurity as their career path, and they don't, but if they did, and we assumed no more growth, right? Not a single new job is added over in cybersecurity over the next 5, 10, 15 years, we will actually get full employment from those 60,000 grads to fill 660,000 roles in 11 years, right? That's a problem. There really is a need for non-traditional hiring. There's a need for computer science and traditional hiring. So there's all these great vessels and programs that have been created. But when you start thinking about just the magnitude and scope of how much talent we really need to have out there, it defines, and to me shows you just how important the idea of apprenticeship is, and just how important of a role an intermediary can play within this kind of talent development evolution over the next 5 to 10 years. And even beyond that, right? Like, I think we've got to get more kids in college. We've got to get more career transitioners looking at the stuff. So it really does take all aspects up front. And I think what it really boils down to is how employers are looking across the country at all these different skills, paths, and opportunities for folks to learn and really deep dive into, okay, what does that mean to me? What does that mean for our organization? And how do we create talent acquisition strategies for our organization that are conducive to actually, hiring from all of those organizations, right? And I think I've said this stuff ad nauseum over the years of like, well thought out job descriptions. It's still one that I consistently hear when we go out and speak. Is there's always this disgust with just how job positions are written, and it happens, and it's true, right? They really are bad. Somebody wrote one 10 years ago. It was horrible. It's been cut and pasted to infinity and beyond, and we really need to get better at it. Looking at what is our actual talent acquisition strategy. What is it that we're looking for when we're trying to find folks? Do we need a degree? Do we need the certification? Does everybody have to have a CISSP to come work for our organization? The short answer of all these things is no, right? If you, with a little bit of intentionality and some strategic partners, I'm confident that there are options, right? CyberUp is a great path and a great option. Obviously, I'm partial. We do good work, but there's lots of great ways for companies to get into this, and that's where I think a really good segue into this idea of what is a high intervention intermediary. I put CyberUp into that category of a high intervention intermediary. That word for reference, if you're really interested and want to kind of nerd out an apprenticeship as a whole, there's a group, Apprenticeship for America. They're doing some really cool stuff on a national level, right? And it's all inclusive. It's not just a cybersecurity thing. They're focusing on the education and the accounting and all kinds of different degree programs or apprenticeship programs that exist, because all those jobs and roles are just short, right? I know for a fact accounting's taking a huge hit right now. It's had an impact on us just in terms of cost of doing things. So all important. So this idea of high intervention intermediary was really taken, from standards, standard creation, and really thinking through how to build it to really take it a step further. And then I think I'm actually going to take one step back before I jump into the high intervention intermediary pieces. Really, what are the kind of core components, right? I mentioned what are the core things of an apprenticeship. What do those mean to an employer that they have to do in their end to like make those things happen, right? So the number one part I think is really important. I think that it's not super complicated. I think for employers really is that idea of what is the related training instruction they're going to deliver, right? They create a program, they go to an intermediary, get these standards, they make them, right? Great. We've got standards, but what are the platforms? What is the curriculum? What are we going to actually offer these individuals as part of their learning and apprenticeship program? And that takes time and effort, right? You're generally going to have somebody on your staff who understands training and development. You're going to have somebody on your staff who, has the ability to go maybe contract negotiate with different partners and get certifications and blocks of instruction that are out there. I'm going to really kind of hone in and build that out what you want it to be for your organization. Now, some companies, large, the Deloittes, Booz Allens of the world, Accentures of the world, right? They all have these large training universities, right? They're a large multi-billion-dollar company with huge training programs that already exist of pathways for them to continue to learn and develop throughout their path. And so a lot of them may have some of that low-hanging fruit for the training dollars, but not every company has that. So it is, an important part and just a thing to consider. The second aspect of really is where are the people coming from, right? Where are you identifying? Where are your recruiters and talent acquisition folks finding candidates, right? So if we're always looking at universities and the colleges, and we get it, we all have an affinity for specific schools, whether it's Harvard, Duke, or maybe Southeast Missouri State. I don't know, right? We all have our schools and colleges we like, and we have a tendency to kind of gravitate towards those. But there still is a need to try to find the people to come into the program. Then you want to make sure that, right, you're getting the right diversity recruitment numbers, you're bringing the right strategic partners into the mix. And so there's a lot of variables in this, and it does add an extra service or extra thing or vessel that your talent teams are going to have to learn and do. And then the third really is, is your organization equipped, to have, we'll call it at scale mentorship type of programs for your individual workers as they get hired and go into the apprenticeship program, right? So, those are three things that generally require money, right? Which is always important to do any type of program. And it really is the third thing. It really requires a level of intentionality, generally a staff or a salary or person who's exclusively focusing on this in their time. So now, what is an apprenticeship intermediary? And the short answer and the best summary I could possibly do is all the things that I just said, from creating curriculum to creating recruitment pathways to like managing the mentorship. CyberUp or a high intervention intermediary does all of that stuff, right? Only thing we need from an employer to do is, hey, here is a role, here is a job. We're willing and able to put this person into a paid apprenticeship program where we're going to support them over the course of 12 to 18 months. And understanding that CyberUp in return for that role, right, is going to provide related training instruction. We're going to provide mentorship. We're going to provide all the administration stuff behind the Department of Labor to ensure when they're said and done that they've completed their apprenticeship program. And we really take care of all that stuff. So now, from an employer standpoint, all they really have to do is ensure really two things. One, that they're making the right choice for the person who's going into that role and that they think is going to be the best way, right? And I would encourage you to work with, an organization like ours who I'd say we pride ourselves in getting to know our employer partners. We pride ourselves in getting to know our managers and really understanding what it is you like when you hire somebody, and also what are some of the important, we'll call them power skills that you're looking for from an individual when you decide to make an offer in that role. So all important things and considerations for those organizations that are really looking to jump into the world of apprenticeship. So with that being said, the advantage really comes down, and what I would say the piece that really sets CyberUp apart maybe from others is really it's just the flexibility in which how we do that, right? We've tried multiple ways over the past 6 or 7 years, right? Because employer engagement, again, said it a second ago, has been the number one kind of difficult, challenging thing for every program across the country. And that's not even just apprenticeship programs. That is college programs. We haven't quite figured out entry-level hiring in the United. I'm not even going to say the United States. In the world, we've not figured out entry-level hiring, right? I've seen pockets and moments of hope for me that I think we're going to get there to where we really need to be to have full employment, but we're getting better, right? So I wanted to make sure I kind of, jump in and dive just a little deeper into those things. So what intermediary like us do, right? So there is the idea of, hiring or signing someone for your program. For us, we've got a, incredibly talented team of folks that are working hand in hand with our employers to really understand the ins and outs of their program, the ins and outs of their team, and what are the nuances behind it, right? So that way we can make sure that we're getting you the best, brightest individual and apprentice candidate that we could possibly give you to do. So the good news is, regardless of who you decide to go with, right? Every person that comes through our program, we've done a good job of standardizing what that person comes. Every person is going to come to you with a CompTIA Security Plus. We have a lot of statistics. I think we're like 45% of our candidates all have college degrees. I think 37, 38 years old is our average age. So we have a lot of career transitioners that are coming into our program really looking for that next step, right? Or, maybe they found themselves displaced post-COVID and have really not really found that thing. But, we've all seen that the value of an IT and technology career really centers around future growth, future growth of income. And there's just a lot of opportunity there for those individuals to learn and grow and continue to have what I would call a pandemic resilient career, or just a resilient career that's going to stand the test of time and give you skills that'll last for years, right? It's not something that's going to be set and forget it. So we're going to make sure that we're doing all the things of recruiting and screening, delivering the OJT, developing curriculum. We stay on top of that, and we try to continue to update what our curriculum offerings are, especially for the stuff during the actual apprenticeship when they're doing the OJT and their RTI while they're doing their apprenticeship. It's really important that we want to continue to evolve, right? Operational technology has come up, so many times over the last several months of where there's opportunities there for, hyper focus and OT type of stuff. And if you're interested to learn more about that, we did have an episode a couple months ago about operational technology. It was really interesting. It was a whole new world for me to understand what that actually meant. And then, ultimately it's just making sure we're administering the program the best way possible, and that we have a very high standard. I'd say the team, and we've prided ourselves on being the best of what we do and really leaning into our employer partners to really help to satisfy the things they're looking for. We have 4 minutes left. Holy cow, that went way faster than I anticipated. Is kind of going on. So back to this idea of, I think we're really grasping for, in terms of just nationwide apprenticeship adoption. Really, it's an important aspect if we really got to look at the start, right? When I say the start is, what are the requirements of positions we're hiring for, and not just made up requirements, but what are the requirements there? And look, for record, I am not saying that anybody is intended to lower your standards or reduce the type of candidates you've hired. The idea is really to look a little bit wider and then allow us to help you. It helps us to go out and identify and prepare those folks to meet those standards, right? It's easier for me to get somebody up to there to meet your standards versus trying to just ask you to arbitrarily lower your standards, which is not going to result and help anybody in the grand scheme of things, right? So we really want to make sure that we're clear in that. And this statement here, I think, really does a good job of describing it. But intermediaries cut through the complexity of developing and delivering apprenticeships by taking on some of the tasks that an employer would perform if it ran a program all by itself, right? So there's some videos out there for us. We've been helping Centene for the past 4 years do apprenticeship and some customized training. And even as large as they are of a Fortune 24, right, we've made the life of their process and recruitment and hiring 10 times easier. And it's actually become just part of the fabric of their organization. So it's become a very thoughtful and well-intentioned partnership between the two of us. And we have others that obviously that are like that. But having those organizations believe in this and really see the value of apprenticeship is important. Now, in the last 2 minutes that we have here with everybody, would be my call to action. If you find yourself that you are an employer and you've heard the word apprenticeship, and I feel like if you haven't heard it, in the past 2 or 3 years, I don't think you've been under a rock, but the word's been around quite a bit, and obviously, especially in our circles. But if you're on the fence, or if you've looked at apprenticeship and you've seen this word 100 times, and you're just like, what does this mean to me? And I don't understand how it works. Give us a call. Shoot out to me. Reach out to me directly. Find me on LinkedIn. I think I was tagged in this post to do it. Find me on LinkedIn. Myself or the team, we will walk you through, and we'll call it an apprenticeship 101, right? My goal is to make sure that we spread apprenticeship regardless of subject. Cyber, code, don't care. We're going to stick to cyber because that's what CyberUp does. But in terms of just apprenticeship adoption across the country, I am a fan of across all sectors: nursing, accounting, teaching, you name it. So if you're interested and just want to learn, and I'll even cast, again, broad and beyond cyber, reach out, find me. Happy to have a conversation, and let me just show you how simple and easy it can be to adopt the idea of apprenticeship and really make it intentional. The other part, and I'll tag this in the comments when we put this out on the blog, is really what is the difference between an internship and an apprenticeship. We won't go into that today because we're just simply out of time, but a really good idea to take a look at just that and really understand, there are different roles and functions within this idea of an apprenticeship versus an internship, and both are great. So it's not intended to say there's an either or one or the other. Both serve different roles and are different and fantastic opportunities. So I would love to have a conversation with you, or somebody on the team would love to have a conversation with you about, just the world of apprenticeship. and tell you how we can help you, right? And even if it's not us, we can point you in the right direction to somebody who can, because again, we want to make sure that apprenticeship is just wildly adopted. Super excited about next week's guest. This was a homer pick. It seemed appropriate. We just celebrated Kiana's 2-year anniversary with us at CyberUp, and just how much of a resource that she is for the team. So, at this point, she has interviewed, probably, well over 1,000 folks to come into the program over the last 2 years, and has coached and mentored, tons and tons of folks. So we're going to dive into this idea of, all right, great. I've got skills, right? I've gone to college or apprenticeship. I got a boot camp, whatever. Okay. Now what do I do? Right. That first job is elusive. That's where organizations, intermediaries come in for employers and try to help and advocate for individuals and people to match those two up. But what do those skills mean for you, right? I got the skill. How do I highlight it? How do I put it on my resume? How do I put it on my LinkedIn profile? How do I say it to a person that I'm interviewing with to show that I know my job and the things that I need to do? So Kiana will join us next week as we jump into the idea of, I've got skills, now what? And we'll make sure we go over that with everybody. So as always, I appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been a blast of the year for me to just jump on, and I've had some incredible guests. I've made some new friends along the way, but it's been fun to just share something that we're passionate about and put it out in a really good way. I think that I hope is helpful for other folks. So until next week, I really appreciate you guys. Have a great week, and be sure to always be out there leveling up your career. Thanks very much.